Well, here we go. One of the most highly anticipated cars of 2024 is also one of the most controversial cars of 2024. This is the new Mercedes-Benz AMG C63 SE Performance. And for the first time that the car has worn a C63 badge, there's no stonking V8 engine under the bonnet. You've got a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder here, but under the back, there's a battery pack and an electric motor. And you look at the specs of this car, and you can kind of hardly believe it, but this is more powerful, faster, better, more agile than the previous generation car, despite the lack of the engine. But this is what we're hearing. People are claiming that the new C63 has lost its soul for the pursuit of technology. Is that the case? Well, tell you what, let's find out. The evolution of the new Mercedes-Benz C63 extends far beyond the change from V8 power. The hybrid combination delivers 350 kilowatts and 545 newton meters from the M139i 2-litre engine under the bonnet, now making this implementation the most powerful 4-cylinder motor in series production. It uses F1-inspired electric turbocharging to eliminate response lag at low revs and when you lift off the throttle. This is supplemented with up to 150 kilowatts from the electric motor and 6.1 kilowatt-hour battery pack at the rear of the car. At full blend, the combined output is a staggering 500 kilowatts and 1,020 newton meters, with a claimed 0 to 100 km/h sprint of just 3.4 seconds. Peak power is available in a racing-like 10-second burst mode, and the car uses both a 9-speed AMG multi-clutch transmission as well as a 2-speed electric drive that optimises the electric motor's performance above and below 140 km/h. It features all-wheel drive for the first time and even offers rear-axle steering for both stability and cornering assistance. All this tech comes with a weight penalty though. The 63 tips the scales at over 2.1 tonne, 400 kilograms more than a C300. Better keep an eye on those tyres and brakes. In terms of styling, the car is 50mm longer than a regular W206 C-Class and has a 10mm longer wheelbase thanks to an extended front clip. This means the wider front guards and vented bonnet are unique to the 63. There are subtly aggressive aero additions around the rest of the car that give the sporting C-Class a far more mature stance, visually closing the gap to the E63. It may not growl like a wolf in sheep's clothing anymore, but it's a more efficient techno-predator in every other way. Now, at the heart of the new C63 is, well, a 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine. This is the same motor, albeit substantially enhanced, that you'd find under the front of an AMG A45S. But it is still an AMG. You've got your plaque here showing that this was handcrafted in a Falterback by Antonio Matic, Auto's brother, I assume. The turbo is here on display, so you can see that, yeah, okay, you've got a performance vehicle under the bonnet here, but I think we'll point this out a bit later on. The power credentials of this engine are nothing short of spectacular. What Mercedes-Benz has been able to do in a capacity that people have once said is what milk and juice come into. I tell you what, this is some really nice organically made juice. The vitamins in here to get over 300 kilowatts out of this engine is pretty impressive. But it's not just that makes this car interesting. It's the combination of the hybrid drivetrain, because combined you've got 500 kilowatts and over a kilonewton of torque available in a performance sedan. Now, I don't know quite how to explain that in real world, but previously when we were talking over 1,000 newton meters, Mercedes-Benz had that in an SL65, which was a twin-turbo 6-litre V12. This is a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo. Pretty impressive stuff. Now, obviously, with the petrol engine up front, we can talk about the battery and electric motor, which of course you can't see because it's all under the floor. But it's worth pointing out that because it is under the floor, you've got a pretty substantially reduced boot space on the C63 to a regular C-Class. Something to check and see if the golf clubs fit, because I know that that's how this car is going to work. But it does show that there are a few compromises from this over a regular C. So you do need to still make the informed decision to be driving the executive hot rod. What is interesting though is the plug-in hybrid system. You do come in with a plug. You can drive this car. It's a 6.1 kilowatt hour battery. It's got about a 15 kilometre electric only range. But what it also means is if you need to go out and are leaving early for golf or work or whatever it is you're doing, you can roll around perfectly silent in this thing. And you find in car parks and whatnot, it's running on full electric power all the time. The other thing worth noting is you don't actually need to really plug it in. If you put the car in Sport Plus or one of its other performance settings, the regeneration capability of the car will actually recharge the battery for you. And you need that battery to get the performance maximum potential out of the new C63. And I'll explain that when we're behind the wheel. But before we go, let's just have another look at a couple of the other points of this car, because if you're not familiar with the C-Class, there are some pretty key things to call out. Now, we're not going to dwell on the interior of the car too much because arguably that's not what you're here to see, but it is worth pointing out that obviously the back of the C63, same as the back of the C-Class, very comfortable seat. Your seat pretty low. I'm 6'3", that's in my driving position. I've got plenty of room. I'd be fine here on shorter trips, but it is worth knowing. I've spent quite a bit of time with C-Classes. When you're running 4 up and you've got a bit of weight in the back, the compliance on a regular C, it's not quite there. You do tend to feel more of the thumps as the rear suspension cops a bit of weight over it. So it does tend to work better as a 2-up car. That said, you like the idea of this, you want to put people in the back, there is of course the GLC, which is the SUV based on this. And while there isn't an official announcement or a brochure listing just yet, I don't think it really takes a long bow to assume that that's going to cop the AMG treatment before too long. Let's have a quick look up front. Now, it's worth pointing out that this car is fitted with the standard seats. There is an optional sports seat package. There's an optional carbon fiber interior package and exterior package. But otherwise, the way you see this car here with the Burmester, with the sunroof, with the wheels, this is standard. So I think in terms of the way that the C63 is packaged, and particularly the pricing, I think it's about $187,000 before on-road costs. Previously, back in 2020, the run-out W205 C-Class or C63 sedan was about $167,000. So yeah, okay, there's a 20 grand price lift there, but the whole C-Class range has lifted during that period, and you're paying more now for a C200 or 300 than you were on the W205. So I think in terms of a percentage step up, the value that you get out of this car, which, let's be clear again, has performance credentials that outrank pretty much everything else, it's actually a bit of a performance bargain at that price. Now, what I will say, we've covered the C-Class off in detail quite significantly before. So again, we've got a bunch of other videos you can see for both C-Class and GLC, C200, C300, where we go through a lot of the screens and things. But what is worth calling out here on the C63 is the AMG track performance capability. So this is standard. You get the AMG readouts here, which allow you to see a little bit more interesting dynamic displays about how the energy flow is happening, how you're recharging, what part of the car you're using. You can see the torque and the response that you're currently being allowed to play with, which are kind of phone numbers. But you've also got the AMG track package. So if you are going to go and do track days and things, it's got race circuits pre-programmed into it. You can look at lap times and split points and all sorts of cool configurable things all through the MBUX infotainment here. The only other call out in the car in terms of technology that you don't get on a regular C-Class is the standard AMG, the knobs here on the wheel. Now I'm going to switch the car on, which you get a kind of cool electric kit noise, but there's no engine firing because it will run on its electric mode straight away. So you can sneak out in the morning if you need to before the 4-cylinder fires up. But these two dials on the steering wheel here, you've got that configurability. We've seen that in other AMG models. You've got little tabs and dials and press buttons so you can turn on the fake cabin noise, or you can turn off the fake cabin noise. You can adjust your regen settings. You can adjust the car's drive mode settings. So you do have a lot of that configurability from here. Of course, the digital instrument cluster, nice and clear. It's got some AMG specific screens, and even the head-up display has got some AMG specific settings there too. So you do feel that you're in a slightly more special environment than if you've jumped out of a C300 or a C200, but the rest of the cabin is the same. It's nicely built, it's well featured, and it does feel pretty tech, pretty modern, and pretty clever. But let's now talk about where the cleverness of this car is, which is in that drive line. And I think the best way to do that is hit the road. Now, I would normally kind of fire it up and you get a really cool theatrical start and we'd all feel pretty good, but the car is actually running right now. So I'll sneak off down the driveway in silent mode and we'll see what this thing is like on the open road. Now, obviously, I know that you're here to learn about the C63 in a performance environment, but remember, if you're buying one of these, you have to live in a regular environment all the time. And it was one of the things that I always found, quite personally with the previous generation car, it was always on. You were always with the angry V8. It was always a bit lurchy. It was always ready to go, which, don't get me wrong, was pretty fun. But I tell you what, on a wet day or when you perhaps were leaving early in the morning and you didn't want to wake the family, you know, there's sort of ways to do it. Me, personally as well, I actually preferred the C43 because with the all-wheel drive and the 6-cylinder, you still got a wonderful noise out of the thing, but you were able to explore the performance of that car without putting yourself on the edge. And it's something that the C63 sort of had. It was tremendously entertaining, but it was also probably trying its best to kill you all the time. Move to the new car and you've got a far more evolved regular car under the skin of what is a kind of a technological marvel when it comes to being a performance sports sedan. But before we sport it up, let's talk comfort. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the C-Class, particularly C200, a fair bit of time in the C300, and it really is a lovely car to drive, both around town and touring. Getting into this, sure, we've got 20-inch wheels, we've got a more dynamically tuned suspension setup, and it does have variable rate dampers, but you're already quite comfortable, and I'm in comfort mode. We're on some back roads here. They're not perfectly surfaced. You've got bumps, you've got potholes, you've got changing tarmac surfaces. You could live with this thing all day. And that was one of the issues that I personally found with the W205, is that you were always C63ing. It was always firm. It was always kind of angry. And it was always like a bit of a park bench to sit on. We've got the regular seats. You can get sports seats as an option. But the way that you can use this car as a, I guess, daily executive transport, it has really, really evolved. This is a very, very usable car in its off mode. And I think that's probably more important for buyers than how fast it goes. But how fast it goes is kind of how we hear, right? It's what we want to hear about. This is the benchmark sports sedan for Mercedes-AMG because it's the most accessible sports sedan. Since the C63 came out, it has been the way that you could be it's a doorway to performance AMG ownership. And I know you've got A's and CLA's, but it was the V8, the 6.3, the twin turbo 4-litre that you had in other cars. It made it a really exciting thing to have. Whereas now we've got Formula One technology, the motor up front, the 4-cylinder turbo up front. Now, here's something for you, because I can hear you already going, oh, but James, it hasn't got a V8 and we want a V8. There's more power from that 2-litre 4-cylinder than the W204 got from its 6.3-litre V8. Think about that. Now, I'm still in comfort mode and I'm picking up speed on these roads almost effortlessly. So I'm going to dial it up a little bit because, you know, that's why we're here. And instantly you can hear the exhaust start to crackle and you can you can hear what we're kind of, I guess, affectionately calling our Forza Horizon tune in-car audio, because it is a little bit fake. Oh, that's nice. But you get the sense that this thing's got some real capability even on public roads. And the thing is you can go from Jekyll to Hyde and Hyde back to Jekyll, particularly when there's cars coming the other way, effortlessly. And we can go on, and we're holding on, and poor Matt here is holding on probably tighter than I am, and this thing's exhilarating and it's fun and it's ridiculously fast. And then you come off the throttle and you can be relaxed and calm again. And I really like that about this car, because this is what the technology allows us to do these days. You can be infinitely flexible. Now, we're coming through a windy little pass here, and I'm using we've got the 9-speed AMG transmission, and you can hear, you get those nice little exhaust farts out the back. But what we notice on these things, you've got a rear wheel steer on this thing, that it's not able to really feel like there's any loss of traction or any loss of ability, even on some of these tighter corners. And I was tipping it in deliberately a little quickly there just to see what you'd get. There was maybe a tiny hint of understeer, but then the back comes around because the steering adjusts. There was not really too much of a concern of oversteer, perhaps a little wiggle coming out, but then the car corrects. You can push this thing incredibly hard on regular roads, obviously up to the speed limit. But what it means is if you do feel like getting a little bit more out of your C63 and want to head to a track day, you've got yourself a real weapon here. Now, the system, as we discussed, was developed in consultation, obviously, with the Mercedes Formula One team. You've got really F1 technology here. You've got the four-cylinder engine can power the front or the rear wheels. The battery can power the front or the rear wheels, but they do work in concert. And what you'll find is that you just don't really miss any kind of performance ability from this thing. There's always response. There's always an ability to get the power down. And do you know the thing that we're not really missing through any of this? Because I tell you what, if you are pushing this car, you're concentrating. And the last thing on your mind coming through and managing grip levels and managing these corners is the noise it's making, because I can hear the exhaust going. We've got the in-car stuff on. I'm going to turn it off now just to make that difference. But you know you're in a car that's got a performance angle here. You know you're in a car that's pushing pretty hard. Do I sit there and go, do you know what? I really would have preferred a slightly more rhythmic timbre to my exhaust. Couldn't give a crap, to be honest. Now, of course, we can talk about the car's pretty incredible performance and response, but then there's the other side of that and being able to slow all of that down. It's a pretty heavy customer. This is 2.1 tonne. You've got a pretty chunky car here, and the brakes, I sense, they're needing to work, and I dare say your tyres will probably need to work as well. So previously, if you've had a V8 C63, you would have become best friends with your local Bob Jane for putting new rears on the back, probably because, outside the gym, you've got to launch it every time. Whereas now I feel you're going to need to go through all four, pushing harder on some of these corners. You can hear a little bit of rubber squeal going through. There's no hint of understeer, there's no hint of loss of traction. But if you are moving this car due to its weight in a performance environment, yeah, brakes and tyres are going to do it. Now, I haven't really kind of got to the limit of braking. I imagine on a track day, you'll really begin to understand what it can do, because like I said before, we can slow down. We can actually dynamically adjust our regen here. So I'm going to put it on full regeneration to recharge our battery, so that now if I get off the gas, the car's going to be using friction braking to not only charge up the FEV system, but also help us stop. So the idea again that you've got Formula One technology allowing you to behave a little bit like a Formula One driver by adjusting how your car responds and how you use some of the technology and ability of the new C63. And they say this thing hasn't got a character. It's a lot of fun. And by golly, it's quick. But here's the thing with the new C63. Once you're done with corners and once you're done with having a pretty jolly good fun time, you can wind it all back down again. You can be back in an executive sports sedan, albeit one with a really cool bonnet nostril and cool little lip spoiler. It does look really cool, this thing. The idea of this car now as a techno showpiece, as more than just the executive hot rod of yore, this is a car that can do it all. It's like Mercedes have gone to their engineers with a shelf full of stuff and just said, get all of that and put it into the car. You've got a high performance turbocharged engine up front, big tick there. You've got the modern capability from a plug-in hybrid system there. The stupidity of all that is, right, you can drive this car in one of the global ULEZ zones, the ultra low emission zones that we haven't yet seen here in Australia. So you can say, hey everybody, I can putt around town in my fully electric zero emission C63, more so than you can in a non-hybrid Corolla, which is a pretty funny thing. But with the dynamic suspension that has been taken from the AMG GT Black Series, with the battery system that has been taken from the Mercedes Formula One car, you've got rear axle steering, you've got all-wheel drive, you've got an infinite amount of settings and configuration options from both behind the wheel and through the infotainment system. You've got yourself the ultimate PlayStation that you can go out and have a massive day with a big smile on your face, that literally nothing can keep up with this thing, at the same time that you can have a smart, comfortable, luxurious, well-equipped executive sedan to go and do the shopping with. And I think that's what to me, the C63 has always been missing. It has always been on. You've always had this muscle car, this hot rod, and it's been great. But as we've evolved, I've got older, you've got older, we've matured somewhat. We need to do more things. So now we have this tremendous performance platform. And look, I don't care what you say or think, this thing outperforms pretty much everything else that you could throw a stick at in this sort of price, certainly at this price range. It's tremendously impressive to do what it does, that it doesn't have the brutality and the noise of the V8. Do you know what? I get it. I love that as much as everyone else, but to me, that doesn't take anything away from this car. It's about liking and appreciating this for what it is rather than what it isn't. You know what? From here, it really does look really cool. The wider stance, that extended nose, the nostril in the bonnet, the little lip on the back, it really does look more muscular than a regular C-Class. And I think that's kind of the key. It's sort of gone back to the wolf in sheep's clothing. If you know, you know. But what we've learned today is what Mercedes-Benz have done with this car is it's nothing short of amazing. The capability, the response, the lack of any kind of gap in performance anywhere, whether it's from engine and driveline or from handling and response and even braking. The car knows what it's able to do, and you are able to push it pretty significantly even on standard roads. But I can hear you saying, James, it still hasn't got the V8 and therefore it's lost its soul. Well, can I give you an example? It's an analogy and it may add a little bit of context here. Let's talk F1, because after all, that's where Mercedes-Benz have drawn a lot of the engineering know-how for this car. We all know the time when we were dealing with screaming V10 engines where F1 cars sounded as sweet as syrup all the time. And then it moved to smaller capacity hybrid power plants. And all we hear is people going, oh, but F1's ruined. You can't hear them, it's boring. But then look at the sport. You've got better racing, better engagement, bigger crowds. F1 is going through its, I guess, most glorious time of certain recent memory than we've really ever seen. You've got more people attracted to it. You're able to go to an event and really kind of soak it in without having to wear earmuffs. You can have a conversation with a person next to you. You can take your family and you can all enjoy it. It's an evolution of the sport. No one's saying that those V10s didn't sound amazing, but it hasn't damaged the fact that you've got a really entertaining and enjoyable piece of motorsport to go and consume. It's the same thing with this car. Yes, we all love the V8 noise, but just taking it away, and you would have seen as we were powering through some of those bends, the last thing on my mind was what the exhaust sounded like, because you are pushing this thing and it's egging you to go that little bit harder, that little bit firmer through. You're in the game. You are really engaged with this car. Soundtrack, kind of be damned. Now, I would turn off the in-cabin one because you don't really need it. What it sounds like outside is fine, but what we're seeing is an evolution of the species. And I suppose if you're sitting there thinking, I still want a Mercedes-Benz with a V8, currently you can get one. You can get the AMG GT 4-door, you can get an SL, but the two-door C-Class and E-Class has been combined into the new CLE. Will that car come with an AMG V8? Do you know what? My money's on yes. So if you are looking for a compact, sort of advanced consumer level V8 AMG, Mercedes-Benz is going to have an answer. But for now, with the new C63, I tell you what, don't write it off before you've driven it, because it is amazing. It is new, and it does take you, well, on a journey that I don't think the badge has ever been able to do before. So I'll leave you with that. Give us your feedback. Let us know if you've enjoyed this clip. Hit like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Hit us up with some comments. Head on over to Drive.com.au to read the full review. Check out some more photos of the car, but let us know what you think. Are you intrigued by the fact that you've now got a Formula One inspired technological masterpiece in the executive hot rod? Because I tell you what, this thing makes me want to go out and drive it just that little bit more, and that's exactly